Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royce. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. Lou Montulli has been named one of the top 100 investors in the world under the age of 35. His most recognized work is the HTTP cookie and Lynx browser. Lynx was one of the first browsers still in use today. Lou has also built Fishcamp, one of the earliest live image websites, and has worked Netscape, Impeniance, NowShopping.com, Shopify, Zeta, and JetInsight. Good morning, Lou. How are you?
Good morning, Daphne. I'm really great. Thanks for having me on.
Please tell us about you and what you do.
Yeah, I am primarily a programmer. I consider myself more of a product creator these days than merely a programmer, but I basically try to invent new things and work on things that I'm passionate about.
Did you ever want to be a computer programmer when you were a child?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of stumbled into this line of work. I was a very confused child, I would say. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't really like school, so I didn't see a lot of school in my future. I thought I was going to go join the army or something like that. But then a high school friend of mine talked me into trying one semester at university, and I went and I tried out the ROTC program there, and I realized that the army probably wasn't for me. They wanted me to stand up at attention and yell a lot. It definitely didn't seem like my personality. So ended up staying at school and eventually found computer programming as something that I actually enjoyed doing, and switched my major to computer science. And I never actually finished my degree, but I did learn a lot, and it was there that I started working on the first product that I got to work on that actually turned out to be somewhat of an interesting, world-changing ecosystem. So I'm hinting at Lynx, which was one of the very first World Wide Web browsers.
Did you remember what was the first computer language you studied?
Yeah, in high school, I took a class, and I mostly took the class because I heard it was a great place to just kind of goof off and hang out. It was Pascal. So it was a language that isn't really well used commercially, but it was used for teaching students mostly. And so I took that class, and I did learn the basics of programming there, and I did goof off a lot, and worked on silly programs and things like that. But I did learn something there, and for some reason that gave me the confidence later on to go and start working at the University Computer Center, which gave me the jump start to me eventually becoming a programmer.
So what inspired you to create cookies?
Yeah, so that's cookies is what I'm probably best known for, and it's a little bit of a longer story. So when I was at university, I started working on Lynx just purely as a university project. It was a hypertext browser, and then as I learned about the World Wide Web, which was coming out of Switzerland, CERN, I realized that they had a better concept for network hypertext. And so I joined that project and adapted Lynx to become a web browser. And then simultaneously, NCSA started a project. That was Mark Andreessen and some other folks working in Illinois. They worked on this Mosaic project, which also was a web browser. And over the years, this was during the years 1991 through 1993, there was a lot of interest in the web, and it kept growing and growing and growing. And eventually, it started to become a pretty well-known set of programs. And so in the spring of 1994, many of the open source developers behind the web and Jim Clark came together to create Netscape. So I was part of the founding team there. And it was there that we were trying to build e-commerce solutions and basically create the economic backbone of the web. And that led to the creation of cookies. And so cookies were a really necessary step to create the programming infrastructure that would allow users to create or programmers to create the economic engines that drive the web today. So the cookie is in its simplest form adds memory to the web, and that memory is important to create things like shopping carts for online shopping, or to do simple things like just logging into a website conveniently, or remembering who you are when you return. It is also used by the advertising industry these days, which is why it's quite famous.
That's very interesting. I remember 1991, 1994. I probably just had my first laptop in 1994. And that was very old, maybe black and white. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, laptops of the early 90s or late 80s were not really laptops as we would know them today. The first computer I ever worked on back at the University of Kansas, that's where I went to school, was technically a portable computer, but it was larger than most desktop PCs are today. It was a giant box with it actually had a CRT monitor built into it. That's the old style televisions, and it was only about 4-inch monitor, and the thing was about would be a good size comparison, about the size of a suitcase, I guess, a carry-on suitcase, but way heavier. It weighed about 60 pounds, and it was ridiculous kind of thing.
Well, I think the most ridiculous part was the dial up. There's
Yes.
no actual Wi-Fi like today.
Yeah. The dial-up modems back in those days were 300 baud, which is 300 kilobits. And nowadays everybody has at least 1 megabit, 1 million instead of 300. So it's the speed of the network back then was vastly different. Also, the number of people on the internet. The internet is pretty much the same. It has evolved from the thing that it was back in those days, and so it's existed since the 80s. But in the late 80s, early 90s, it was really restricted just to universities and nonprofits. There was actually a moratorium on any commercial use for it. So it was essentially all students, faculty, researchers, some businesses, but they were using it to really communicate research and development, and they weren't selling anything online. And then it was really the mid 90s, and Netscape was one of the leading companies there that pushed for the commercialization of the web. I think in a positive way. Obviously, sometimes that has a negative connotation, but creating business models around the network, which allowed the network to thrive and grow and get everybody else online. That was our major focus. While simultaneously, one of the really unique things about Netscape was that we were essentially giving all the technology, the standards for the technology, back to the world. So we were publishing all of our ideas as open standards, so that any other company could replicate what we were doing, and it was open to the world. So we were creating commercial software, but at the same time making sure that software and the ideas behind it, the standards behind it, were available to everyone.
How interesting that the technology has become today.
Yeah. So we worked really hard to create a platform, which was our goal was to create essentially a full application development framework within the web to allow other people to create applications on their web pages. Because back in the early 90s, it was just documents. It was just static documents. It'd be like opening Word docs or something like that. And what we wanted to do is make full applications on the web, so you could do all the things that we actually do today. So it's a little funny looking back on it. It's obvious what it is today, but back then it was just documents. And so it'd be a little bit like saying, I'm going to take this word processing system and then turn it into a full programming layer. And that was the challenge we had back then. And we took that on and spent years developing primary technology to get there. Things like JavaScript and SSL for security and many other technologies that enabled application development on the web.
You have such a bright insight for what needed in this industry. Can you share what is your current company, JetInsight, does?
Yeah, so JetInsight is an aviation technology company, and we are the software that powers charter aviation. We don't have full market share, but we think we're the best in the industry, and we hope to keep growing and become really the best and brightest in the industry. But our mission is to help the charter industry become more organized, more efficient, and to grow through technology.
What is your day like at work? Sounds like very interesting work
Yeah.
that you do.
So it's still a startup. So we're still a relatively small company. I am the co-founder and CTO, and CTO has many different meetings in the world of technology, right? So some CTOs, especially larger companies, are purely E-staff positions and have many directors working for them. And then as you go smaller and smaller, you find CTOs like me who are actually very involved in the technology and working every day in the code base. So that's what I really love to do. I really like creating products and using my programming skills to do so. But I spend the majority of my day working with the product team to come up with and refine features, working with the engineering team to solve technical problems, and then also implementing features in code. So, it's one of the beautiful things about a startup is that I can be really technically involved in the product and not just a manager, because it's not really the thing I love. Managing people is a specific art, and there are many people who love to do that and do it really well. And I have some skills there, but they're mediocre compared to my product creation skills.
Is there something that you like to do or build outside of your work?
Yeah, so my past is from the open source world. Lynx was an open source product before they were calling it open source. And now obviously open source has become a kind of a big part of the entire technology world. So our software at JetInsight and pretty much every company these days relies on some amount of open source software. One of my passion projects is a product called GrooveScribe, and it's sheet music generator for drummers. So we use it to communicate ideas between drummers for educational purposes or just to have ideas or practice. So it's somewhat of a passion project of mine. I'm a drummer in my spare time. It's a passionate hobby. And as I was trying to get better, I was frustrated by the state of the world for creating sheet music, as there's a lot of great programs out there if you're a composer or a classical music person, but they're very complicated, difficult to use software, designed for professional composers. And what I wanted was something that an average person could use, and it was very focused for drumming. So created that tool, and it's been a real joy because as I travel around, I meet lots of other drummers who use the product and are really excited about the technology.
I understand you like music, even playing the music band. So what type of music instrument do you play?
Yeah, so I am a drummer. So it's a traditional kit drummer. I sometimes dabble on the cajon and some other things, if you've seen me play that. But yeah, so I play mostly funk music. I would say that's my favorite genre, but I play a lot of blues. I don't play jazz, unfortunately, although that's something I really need to learn, and play R&B and some alternative rock and some classic rock and that sort of thing. But basically anything that'll come my way, and it looks like an interesting opportunity. I'm very far from becoming a professional musician, but I'm a passionate amateur, enthusiastic amateur, I would say, or as I like to tell people, I'm just a very serious amateur, and you can take that either way. He's seriously amateur, or he's serious about his amateur status. Uh, but it's something that's fun, and I play as often as I can, and trying to get better.
Is it jazz you have to improvise on spot? Like there's no practice to go with the jazz.
Yeah, so most of the time when we think about jazz, like we're thinking about bop drumming or something like that, that is a highly improvised musical form where there's kind of a pattern to it, to the song, but the pattern is very loosely defined, and then everything else around it is improvised. That is not the only form of jazz. Jazz can mean many things. Um, and something like big band sounds a lot like jazz sometimes, but it's very scripted, i.e. they play it the same way every time. So you can hear jazz that is scripted, but most of the time it is true you're talking about improvised music. Yeah.
Do you find connection between computer programming and music?
There are some similarities there, at least personally. When I am programming, I find myself in a very concentrated flow state. That is, if I'm doing it well, I really get into the problem, and my entire thinking process is focused on that problem, and everything else in the world is shut out. And I could go for many hours without realizing it. So the time just it doesn't really impact me at all. And music, I think when it's properly, when I'm really into the song, and the band is playing really well and working well together, can have that same state, fall into this flow state where I am part of the music and nothing else intrudes. Now, I guess somewhat different there, is most songs are 3 to 6 minutes, versus programming problem is usually hours worth of time, and very different from that perspective. But that the flow state side of it is one of the things that I find most enjoyable. That when in the act of performing, there's nothing else except me in the music, and I don't think about the movement of my hands and arms and feet. Actually, if I do think about those things, it'll probably cause everything to fall apart, because one of the things about being a drummer is using all four limbs at the same time, and uh, if I actually think about that in any way, then it becomes overwhelming. Part of drum training is to just be able to do it so many times that you forget that you're even doing it. So like my left leg can be doing eighth notes while my right leg is doing syncopated upbeats, and my right hand is doing 16th notes, and the left hand is comping something complicated. If I hadn't done that thousands and thousands of times before, it would be overwhelming. So again, that's that flow state where you're doing it without thinking about it.
Well, I would have to say you are a pretty serious amateur musician.
Thank you. There are some genres where I'm starting to feel competent, at least, and other places I just feel like a complete newbie. And obviously, compared to a true professional, I know some real professional drummers who've dedicated their life to it. My skill level is very tiny. I'm just really happy to be part of something that brings enjoyment to me, and also other people seem to enjoy it as well.
Do you ever play in any public places?
Yes, on occasion. So I do a lot of my performing in a private music club called The Family, which is based in San Francisco and in Woodside. And that's a wonderful place for musicians to get together and perform. And I do that, maybe 20 or 30 times a year. And then I have a few different groups that play out on occasion, but we don't have any like absolutely regular gigs. Eventually, when I'm really good, I will have hopefully be in a band that people know about. But right now, it's all pretty casual.
Can wait and wish you good luck. Maybe we get lucky one of days to hear your music.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to quit my day job, right? At least in the tech world, I have some pretty good competencies, and music right now is just a passionate hobby.
So let's talk about tech. So are you involved in any other tech ventures like AI, Web3, 4 or 5, maybe blockchain, etc.?
I think you got all the buzzwords there. Yeah, so my current company is not currently using any of those technologies. I do think that there is a big hype cycle going on right now for this new technology. There's certainly a lot of excitement around blockchain and distributed ledger technologies and other things. It is a really interesting technology. At this point, I'm still waiting to see some of the like really great applications. Right? So a kind of interesting analogy to this is the internet existed for more than a decade prior to the technology behind the network actually attaching to consumers. Right? It didn't become popular for a very long time, and there was two sides of that. One was the technology had to keep advancing. Right, in the early days, we had 300 baud modems, and so it was wasn't really mature enough to do a lot of the things that would make it interesting. And then so that as the technology matured, it allowed for better and better uses. And then you also needed something called a killer app. That's just an analogy, but the web became the killer app for the network, and it allowed the average person to make use of the technology in a way that was really useful, and also easy enough to use that anyone could start using it. And so right now we have a lot of hype around these new technologies, but we haven't really found their best use cases. And so in some ways, you've got a technology that's out there searching for a lot of solutions. And until a really great solution comes along that is both technically advanced enough that it can be implemented properly and has an embodiment that is really useful to normal people, it won't take off. Really, it won't really become the next big thing. And so right now, there's a lot of different experimentation going on with these technologies, and I'm sure you will find a bunch of people who claim that their thing is going to be the next big thing, and they might be right. I at this point, I haven't seen the thing that I would bet a lot of money on to that will be the next big thing. So I do think these technologies will certainly be useful and used in the long term, because they're really interesting technologies, but we haven't quite seen where they're going to be best used and where they're going to create new industries.
I have known a lot of young generations, young, very bright people. They're hungry for the next technologies. But yes, you're right. Any advice for the young people?
Yeah, I think that is a good question, especially as follow-up to some of these potentially overhyped technologies. I think it's really easy to get over enamored with the new thing, especially if you're young and new to the industry, because it doesn't matter if you're young or not. You could be new to the technology industry in any way. And the news cycle is talking about the newest technologies because it's new, it's newsworthy. And so it's really easy to think, if all you're doing is reading topical news, that these are the important things. But they're new. They're probably not that important yet, because the rest of the industry is doing what the rest of the industry has been doing for a long time, decades in some cases. So I think it's important not to get too fixated on what's new and learn what is actually being used in the industry today, especially if your goal is to become proficient or really good at something in the technology space. I would recommend to, instead of looking at what is the next big thing, is just say, well, I don't know what the next big thing is, but I know what the thing is right now, and I know these things exist, and I can get good at these things. And if you do that, you'll be useful to the industry right now, rather than hoping that the next big thing actually turns into the next big thing. So this is a strategy that reduces a lot of risk. Right? For instance, you can go get really good at programming C++, which is a language that has been around for 30 plus years and is still in huge demand across the entire industry. But it's maybe not as sexy as some of these newer programming languages that people are attaching to. So I would recommend learn the basics, learn what is in use, and go out there and learn how people do things today. And it's after that you can, once you have strong knowledge of what is actually going on today, you can say, well, what is the future going to be? And I already have these core skills that work today. I can then work towards reinventing the future.
That there are wiggle rooms to grow better for what you already know.
Yeah. So it's hard to give generic advice to people, because really advice should be specific to the individual. So I guess if I was tailoring my advice to someone who was just out of school and looking to find their way in the technology industry, the advice that I gave about sticking to the basics and what is used today would be very relevant. It's chasing after the golden ring often leads to a lot of disappointment, and there's plenty of time to do that. Right? It's often the case that people underestimate how much time they have to take their time to learn what is really important, and then go on and do that thing that they've been dreaming about. Right? So it's important to temper our ambitions just a little bit. And I'm not saying not to go after it, because those are the things that people who really go after the dreams are the folks who end up changing the world. But it is also important to understand what has gone on in the past, and to learn from it. I certainly wish I had known more before I embarked on a journey of entrepreneurship, and had a lot of hard knocks along the way. But now I'm at a point where I've got a fair amount of learning, and can go do things reasonably straightforward, and I can make all new mistakes.
So what is your philosophy working in tech in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so one of the things I find very interesting about working here, and it's been over 20 years, is how different the reality is from how it's projected in the media, especially around the rest of the United States and the world. So I think if people know, I think they know Silicon Valley by watching the HBO show Silicon Valley, or reading press descriptions. They will not know who we are, right? So the news deals with exceptional events, and that's what makes it newsworthy. And yet, if you were reading the news, you would just think that Silicon Valley is filled with immoral venture capitalists, immoral CEOs, and incredibly woke software programmers. And the reality is not really that. And certainly, those people exist, and there's many different types of people here. what I've found is that most of the people that I have worked with are really, really normal normal people who care a lot about what they do. Like the best programmers and product creators really attach to their products and give it all of their energy, and they care a lot about making the best possible product. They're certainly not out there to just destroy the world as many publications would lead you to believe. So I think, I don't know exactly how to put a number to it, but I would say 90% of all the people I've met here are really well-meaning people who care about the world, care about products, and are really trying to make the world a better place by creating better technologies. And then there certainly are people who you read about in the news who are, out there to, make money for themselves and are just not great people. But I think that stereotype is really overblown.
I know you recently participated in the interview on Signal with George Clooney, Amal Clooney, Venus Williams, and other members of Snowflakes. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so Twilio is a large company here in the Bay Area, and they do their developer conference, and so I was invited to be one of the keynote speakers there. And I didn't know what an illustrious dais it would be at the time. I simply agreed to do a relatively short interview segment with their head of product, and then found out later that George Clooney and his wife and Venus Williams and many other very illustrious, much more accomplished people than I were also going to be speaking at that event. The only downside to that whole thing was the conference is all online this year, so it didn't actually meet in person. So I filmed my segment in a in a large recording studio, and I never got to meet them. So you might see my name next to theirs, but I did not get the pleasure of hanging out and asking them similar questions. That would have been fun.
That would be fun. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure you will one day, because we kind of opened up after pandemic. It's not just about virtual, it's about in person now.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the beauties of the post-pandemic is that we got all of that time to savor how important human contact is and human experience. Those many months of being away, certainly for me, really reinforced how great society can be, and there's certainly still angry people in the world and unpleasant encounters, but I definitely value in-person experiences so much more now, having that deficit, and I hope I can keep that here in my heart, because I really hate to take that for granted in the future. It's hanging out with people is a lovely experience.
And also your music too.
Yes. I our uh, our band moved online and started creating music videos and individually recorded segments, and so that was like a fun experience. We each recorded our own musical part at home and then stitched it all together using music editing software, and that was a fun experience. But it definitely isn't the same, and it wasn't the same kind of visceral fun as being in the same room with other people and responding musically to the rest of the members.
Well, thank you very much, Lou, for your time today. I had a great time with you here, just chat with you about you, your life, and your whole professional background.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I hope this was successful for you, and I hope the audience enjoys it. It was certainly a lot of fun for me.
Thank you.